Trust is a risky thing. And the more hardships you navigate in life, the harder it is to trust. Not just people, but the God who seems to allow those hardships to happen. This is something that today's guest, Noelle Cablay, had to navigate. Throughout her childhood, she experienced incredibly difficult things. Yet somehow, she came to know God in a beautiful way. And learning to trust Him became a marker of her life. Then, just as she felt like she could settle into the last quarter of her life, a disastrous hardship struck her and left her asking the question, what does it mean to trust God? Scripture is clear about the importance of trusting God. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Yet when God seems to allow hardship, when He seems to not answer prayer, knowing what trust looks like can be confusing at best, frustrating at worst. Yet what Noelle has found is not only is God worthy of trust, He is faithful to show up in ways that are immeasurably more than we ask for or imagine. If you are finding it hard to trust God, I truly believe you will be encouraged by Noelle's story. You're listening to episode 242 of the Where Did You See God podcast. Father God, I just want to thank you that you are God and you are good, and for your wisdom in bringing about connections like these, conversations that never could have existed without you. And so right now, I thank you for this opportunity for Noelle and I to explore who you are, explore this reality you've invited us into. And we could have all kinds of thoughts of where we think it could go, but we want to say, here we are, and offer this space to you. So Holy Spirit, move, guide our words, guide our questions, guide this conversation in a way that brings not honor and glory to us, but to you, God. We thank you in advance for how you will do immeasurably more through this, even if we never know exactly what you do. And we just look forward to experiencing you in this space. Mm-hmm. All this we pray in His holy and precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, now I'm excited to talk some more. We've had a little pre-conversation, and there was already so much goodness in that. So now that the mics are going, who knows what's going to happen. But before we get going, what would you want people to know about who you are?
That appearances are deceiving when it comes to me. People see me and they have no idea what I've really lived through, what I've really had to go through to get to this space that God has brought me, where I'm living a normalized life, that I've got a loving family. People kind of make assumptions about you, and then they hear the truth and it kind of blows their mind. Yeah. And that's not something I asked for. It's just something that happened.
Yeah.
I always get a kick out of it when God uses it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's get right into that. You know, people look at you and they make these assumptions, and there's this huge element of your reality, of your life experience, that they just have no idea. They never could have guessed existed. Tell us about that story.
Oh my goodness. That goes back a ways. I was raised in an extremely abusive, dysfunctional home. I try to tell people that I don't stand on the corner of abuse. I don't own it. There's a lot of people parked next to me on this corner. But I do have some quantitative evidence that, over the years of working through stuff, I ended up discovering a TED Talk done by a beautiful pediatrician working in conjunction with the National Institutes of Health in Coronado, San Diego. And she basically created a longitudinal study with her patients in the area of Coronado. And she was able to kind of have them come at 5 years old and then see where they were at 15. And her dream as a pediatrician was they would all be healthy and they'd be happy and they'd be functional. But she was starting to see that she's working with kids that 10 years later were showing early diabetes and early coronary artery disease. And why is that? So they did a long study, and it led to a survey called the ACE survey. Have you heard of it before? Mm-hmm. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey. Most people score, I would say, 1 or 2. Then you get to 3, and it's a little trouble in the water. And then 4 is like you got a lot of drowning victims. Mm-hmm. And how do we teach them to swim? I scored a 9.
Wow. Wow.
So statistically, I'm in the 94th percentile, which means that if we have 100 people in this room, Paul, 93 of them will have had a better life as a child than I did, and 6 of them will have had it worse. But the reality of that metric is that anybody who scores above 70 is in a bad zone. The reason I say I don't own the corner on it is because, unfortunately, we live in a very broken world.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sin that's committed against people. And so I don't want to pretend that, I'm special because of it. The only thing that's special about it is the way that I was able to find my faith early
Mm.
and how it restructured or reorganized the early imprinting. And up to this day, I'm 64 now, just had a birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. And I look at that process as God's own longitudinal study.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't be here. I certainly shouldn't be a professor at a university working with amazing kids. I shouldn't have raised 3 amazing men. I know who I am, and I know what I could have been, and I'm very aware of what my God has done.
Yeah. And what's so hard about childhood trauma in particular is it can be easy for people to do what you've described, to kind of write it off in their mind as anybody who's experienced certain things, there's not much hope to come out of it unless there is substantial work. But even with substantial work, you're always going to be limited. And so I could definitely understand what you're sharing about how where you are now, people are going to make assumptions that must have meant that you were in the below 20%
Oh, yeah.
on the ACE score. But I also know that wasn't the only challenge that you've had to navigate in your life, right? It wasn't just in childhood that there were hard things and then everything got better. So how did God continue to work through your journey as hardships still hit?
That's a really great thing to say. I'll start here. One of the things about people who've had a history like I have, and it's clinically consistent, is we have trouble trusting. And so one of the tenets of Christianity, you're supposed to have faith in God. You're supposed to trust in God. And I think for people who've never known what it's like not to trust anyone, they don't understand how heavy that is.
Yeah.
The idea of trusting God, trusting situations to turn out okay, trusting that even in the bad things, God is here and God is guiding. It's almost impossible. And quite honestly, people who've suffered like I have, they suffer through that. Even at 64, I'll just even go here like 3 years ago when my cancer was diagnosed. That was such a challenge for me because here I am and I work with students and I've already written a book that had told the sad story of what happened to me and how I was led to more wholeness. And years past, I noticed that God is still leading me to wholeness. And I think, I'm in a good place. Now I'm cool, God. We're going to go live this 1/4 of my life that's left. And I'm just going to own it and do my thing. And then I show up with cancer.
Yeah.
And it's bad. It's a rare cancer. It hits 2 to 4 women out of every 100,000 worldwide. And it's a killer. It kills 70% of the women who get it, including those in stage 1. So I live in uncertainty now. Even though I know evidence of disease at this point, 2.5 years later, and that uncertainty puts me right back to that same space, Paul. When you talk about trust, it's like, okay, I got through all the childhood stuff. God, I'm trusting you to help me work through all of this. And then you get married and you raise kids, and I'm trusting you to help me work with wisdom towards my children, that I'm not a repeat offender of what happened to me. It's so easy. I'm already pre-wired to do terrible things and yell and scream and, and that's just not what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to trust you. And that trust word just goes up again and again and again. And so one of the hardest things that I've found as a person who's had so much happen is this idea that trust keeps coming up again and again and again. I don't think that I'm alone in that. I talk to a lot of students, I don't know if I can pay my tuition, I need to trust God. I mean, those are functional trusts. For me, it's a lot deeper.
Yeah.
I understand what they're going through. But that functional trust touches that kind of attachment disorder thing that I struggle with. And so I would say that the arc of my life is kind of leading me to what is the meaning of trust in someone who had constantly been imprinted as a child before they had words that I might not have anybody I can trust. And then you're introduced to this idea of faith in Jesus, and you can't really have a relationship with him if you don't trust him.
Mm-hmm.
So I struggle with that, but I work hard at it at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
Did that help? Did that answer
I
right?
mean, I, in my head, I'm laughing because I want to say no, it didn't answer because there's so much more to dig into in this, right? Because
Oh,
what you just tapped into, I mean, it was a good answer.
oh.
And this is the thing. It's like, it's actually, I'm sitting here thinking, man, oh man, we've just stumbled into something that is so important to navigate and so hard to navigate. This idea of trusting God. And I love that we're attaching it to how we navigate human trust. And like you were noting, attachments and if you had a parent that proved they weren't trustworthy, if you experienced hardship, it impacts your ability to trust others. You put the work in and you put the faith in to seek God, to love others with your life. And as a human, what that tells us is that then life should be good after. And in a lot of ways, it might have seemed like, there's little hardships, but, you're getting along. And then suddenly you get to 2023 and this God whom you've been trying to trust suddenly allows this horrific thing to happen.
Yeah.
Man, this idea of trust on a spiritual level, an eternal level, is such a hard one for humanity. I think of David as you were talking, who so many of his Psalms were ones that are echoing this sentiment. Like, God, where are you? How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? David was, as God put it, a man after God's own heart. A man who took huge steps of faith, who trusted God in ways that the entire Israelite army refused to.
Right.
And then he gets hit with hardship after hardship after hardship when it should have been the time for rest, the time for victory. And so you answered the question, but I feel like we got to dig in deeper.
Let's go.
I guess first I want to hear about those moments where I imagine you must have felt this betrayal, may be too strong of a word, but God, I have spent decades trusting you and you have allowed this to happen. And I'm struggling to know what trust looks like. Did you have moments like that?
How transparent do you want me to be, Paul?
This is your time.
There's no way to talk about this easily, but we're grown-ups here, so I'll just tell the truth. I woke up covered in blood.
Mm,
I had a massive hemorrhage,
mm.
and I saw that in about 3 in the morning, and I sat on a floor, and I said, "You gotta be kidding. You have got to be kidding me. I just danced with my son at his wedding. I have cancer. I know this is cancer. People are going to tell me not to panic, and they're going to tell me to buck up. And I know what I know. I'm not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who's menopausal, who has bleeding after, is in trouble. And it's not something people like to talk about in the church. It's not comfortable.
Yeah.
It's in mixed company. You're handling it very well. I would give you an A right now, Paul, if you were in my class. But the bottom line really is that there's an indelicacy to the process that I knew I had stepped into, one that I was terrified of, to be honest with you. The medical vulnerability that would be required for me to beat a disease like the one that I found that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I state this in my book, and I mean it. The idea of the medical vulnerability I found was emotionally scalding to me. Of anything I said in that moment to God, it's like, why this? You know how I'm wired. You know what happened to me all those years ago. You know how private I am. And now I have to go and face a disease that I'm going to have to talk about without feeling some sense of shame in public. It's impossible. You are asking something impossible of me, but I didn't really have a choice other than to walk through it. Sometimes God just throws us down that road of the valley, and you just got to go. And there really are no lights on that one.
Mm-hmm.
You just walk in the dark until you see the horizon start to change.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't easy.
Yeah.
It isn't easy. And so I remember when that happened, I went to the hospital, and very quickly it was known that's like, this is not good. But in that first few minutes, and I don't say this lightly, I don't lie, and I can, anybody can like engage in a story and like give it color,
Right,
if you have
right.
half a personality.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that here. I'm telling you exactly what I felt from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
I walk out of the car, it's 4 a.m, and I know I'm going to have to face a crucifixion of a sort that I have dreaded at my core, that anything like this would happen to me. But in the first moments, as I realized that we're going to go down and process, I could sense that God was leading it. And it wasn't easy, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
None of it was easy.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened afterwards is something that changed my life. And it's this. I don't get up in the morning and think I'm special. And I don't get up in the morning and say, you're greatly unique. I'm just one of God's kids who has a hard story, and I'm just trying to live my life and do what He's put in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that we were loved in the way I found out. I didn't know that my family was adored. I'd never had a community before. When I was a child, we were evicted every 6 to 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
I went to 11 schools in 12 years. I didn't have a community. We didn't have a baseball team we were a part of, or a basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we started something, we had to pick up and move. And that was because my mom was nuts.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't a good person. So I didn't know what it would be like to have a Bible study of women that when the word cancer came up, that they got busy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that I lived in a community where, it's a nice community. There's a lot of wealth in this community. I don't pretend to have that. I live a nice life, and I'm grateful for it. I didn't know that people would start to say, what do we have to do?
Mm-hmm.
We need to get her across a finish line that nobody ever saw coming.
Mm-hmm.
That has changed my life. Because you see, my job from the time I became a Christian has been, what is the meaning of trust? How do I trust God through these crazy things that most people don't have to deal with? And I thought I was past it, and I'm facing it again. And what happens is, the minute that hospital visit was something that I told people about, they got busy. They cried with me. They prayed for me. But they did more than that. They got busy. Any time of the whole process, make dinner, flowers showed up all the time. One time, this is a funny story. My husband comes, and I'm sick. Okay, I've had chemo. I'm in bed and I'm sick. He comes in. He goes, "Well, no, I don't know what to do. There's a Maserati outside, and it doesn't have any license plates on it, so it's a new car. And there's a person coming out, and there's a giant box of donuts, 4 feet long, and it was this long. It's
Mm-hmm.
this huge box of donuts, and I'm thinking, God bless them. I'm too sick to eat donuts, so I'm not going to do that. But people did all kinds of crazy things because they loved my family and they loved me.
Mm-hmm.
The impact of that has been profound.
Mm-hmm.
I don't wake up the same.
Yeah.
I've never known this before. And if you were to ask me, was it worth it to go through cancer to get this? It's tough because it was a difficult journey, but I'll tell you what, I've learned a great thing.
Yeah.
I think that as Christians, it's good to do the works that God puts before us. It's good to say, I know right from wrong, and I'm going to care for people.
Mm-hmm.
But love is a little bit different than just caring. That's an aspect of it. It's sacrifice. When you're sacrificing for someone else, and that's what happened to me
Mm-hmm.
in this place, in this community, and I did not see it coming, and it laid me out. I would lay there in bed and start to cry not because I didn't know if I was going to live this next year. I knew the stats. I was well versed in all of it. I studied my cancer so much so that I tried to learn microbiology in order to understand the pathology reports. My doctor goes, "Excuse me, you want me to answer questions on microbiology?" I go, "Yes, I don't understand this particular," and he laughed because
Mhm.
that's just who I am. But the idea that God's love is all around us
Yeah.
and we don't see it. We don't even know it's there
Yeah.
until the need comes. And it was not a little tiny shower. It was a torrent
Mhm.
that happened to me. So was it worth it? I think the better question is, am I changed?
Mhm.
And I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't do enough for others now because I know what that feels like to know that you're actually loved.
Mhm.
And it motivates me.
Yeah. What's wild about humanity is at every stage of life, until we start to realize how off we are on this, we assume we understand things. So when we're kids, we assume we understand reality. We understand how things work. Of course, I'm supposed to have dessert after every meal, and it should be a big dessert because dessert makes me happy. And right. And the older we get, we look back and realize our limited understanding.
Yes.
And the more understanding we get, the more we feel like we understand things until we get a little older and realize we still didn't understand. And when you add into that, not just limited understanding, but external impacts. So you talked about the ACE score and how traumatic things in childhood can significantly impact how one perceives reality, how
Yes.
one understands situations. And so we could keep adding on to these things, and yet we keep feeling like we get certain things. And so as you were talking, you shared about trust being this thread throughout your life. And as you grew in relationship with God, you wanted to understand more and more what it meant to trust him. And likely had many wonderful moments where you're like, I get what it means to trust God now. Like I'm trusting God in these big ways. And then this curveball comes. And it made me think of the story of Peter, who says to Jesus, I will absolutely go to jail for you. I will absolutely die for you, until he gets to this moment where that act would have been immensely humiliating. I thought about it when you shared, like, God, you know what you're asking me to do is impossible. To publicly convey something this humiliating and debilitating, like Peter is standing there feeling the same thing and now wrestling with this tension of just a day ago, I was 100% resolved to give my life for Jesus. And right now,
Right.
I don't know how, and I don't know that I want to. And now I feel such heartbreak because I love Jesus, but I don't know who he is right now. And so I appreciate your willingness to share that vulnerable piece of what a faith walk is meant to be. Because what's happening throughout our lifetime is we keep having to hit these moments where we come face to face with our limited understanding, with our misunderstandings, with our misconceptions, with our own hopes and desires, with our ideas of who we want God to be. And meanwhile, God wants us to know who he is. And it's these moments that we face that we come head to head with what isn't actually God and what isn't actually eternity, where we have the opportunity to stay in our misalignment or to choose to trust a God who at that moment makes no sense to us. And for you to convey to us this part of the journey, the hard moment where you're like, I don't know what to do. And yet God still was. I think is so important because it's trust isn't simply an intellectual thing.
No.
It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. I think that what we are working towards, and we'll spend eternity really coming to terms with, is how our ability to understand God's love is not just intellectual, but it's heart, mind, soul, and strength. To understand what it means to trust God isn't an intellectual choice, but it's heart, mind, soul, and strength. And so here you are now, having discovered trust was more robust than you realized. But even now, you still haven't arrived, right? It's not like the cancer journey is done because you already noted right now you're in remission. Right now, things are fine, but you are living in this state of unknowns. And so, how do you understand trust differently now, having gone through this hard cancer journey and now standing face to face with a lot of unanswered questions and unknowns? What does trust look like in this season?
Trust is learning to embrace the ambiguity. There's a great ambiguity to my life. And I cannot begin to say that I know succinctly what that's going to lead to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to drop this. When I had my last chemotherapy, what happens in chemotherapy is you get hit, and then the week after you're really sick, and then the second week you become neutropenic, which means that basically your cells are blown to bits, including the cells that allow you to carry oxygen throughout your body. And so it takes time for those to regenerate without being under an assault. And so you can't breathe very well. Walking from, the bedroom to the kitchen is like walking up Mount Everest. So I was about 2 weeks out, right at that neutropenic place. I get a phone call, and it's my son, who had been diagnosed at 15 with a lesion in the center of his brain called an arterial venous malformation. And he was screaming, and I'd been told when he was diagnosed with it, it's inoperable. I was told that if he ever calls me screaming, that this is a 4-alarm fire. So I got my phone, and it rings. I go, "Hi, Kyle," and he's screaming. And I jump in the car, and I head over to where he is. I call my husband, and sure enough, he had an aneurysm in that lesion in his brain. What does trust look like? I didn't even have time to think about that. I just kept asking God if he could possibly not let this happen. That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a hard time accepting your will in this matter. But if you could work through this somehow, that would be great.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to say the rest. My whole family came. We sat by his bedside. We were told it was inoperable. But somehow, the little hole in the aneurysm packed itself with a blood clot, and it started the healing process. So there's nothing the doctors could do. We just had to wait. And of course, it got out to my community that my son had an aneurysm. I'm going to say this. This is very interesting, I think, on a kind of a sociological level. You get cancer, and there's the big boom, and, everybody's like, oh, my goodness, this is terrible, blah, blah, blah. And then you go through the whole treatment, and you're done with chemo, and it's like recovery time, and then your kid has an aneurysm, and it gets out. And the first time it was kind of this rah-rah, we're going to help you, we're going to get around you, we're going to pray, and we're going to do this, and we're going to take care of you. This time it was silent. It was a gut punch, not just to me, but to everyone. It's like nobody knew what to say, because it's one thing for it to happen to me. It's another thing for it to happen to my son. And so the whole community was stunned for a minute. And then they got busy. What does he need? He needs an Apple Fall watch. Pastor steps up and says, I'm going to pay for the whole thing. They'd already made a collection. What do we do with the rest of the money? We get him Uber rides because now he's got vision problems. And those had some resolution, and he's much better, and he's very normal now. But at the time, these were big things.
Yeah.
How do you go to the grocery store? You can see some, but he's got significant damage.
Yeah.
So it's like everybody jumped right back in. I still look at this, Paul, and I ask myself, if God looks at me and he says, do you think you did that season well? I'm going to answer no. I didn't. I didn't get up in the morning and name it, claim it. I have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea if I'm going to live, if my son's going to live, if my husband's going to have to put 2 of his family members in the ground, or 1, or none. Did I trust God? What does trust look like? I think it looks like just breathing sometimes, in and out. I think it looks like the small mercies that come upon you at those times.
Hmm.
The woman who's a nurse who showed up with a bag to take to the hospital that had bottles of water and a notepad so I could take notes when the doctor showed up.
Yeah.
Who would have thought of that?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have. People who, without asking, dropped my son off homemade frozen meals and stocked his refrigerator so he didn't have to worry about eating. And stuff like that I didn't ask for. I didn't lay in bed and say, God, can you do these things? Here's what I need. I
Hmm.
just said, if you could help, that would be great.
Hmm.
If you could spare us, that would be great. So what does trust look like? Sometimes trust just looks like accepting the hit
Yeah.
and praying. I don't know if that's a good answer or not,
Hmm.
Paul,
Yeah.
but it's exactly what I went through.
Yeah. Yeah.
I look back now and I'm stunned at my own story.
Hmm.
I don't know how we got through all those days, but we did.
Yeah.
And I do know that God had mechanisms in place
Yeah.
that again stepped up to the plate to help us get across the finish line.
Yeah. It's so hard in those spaces is we do have this mentality pushed into us that it should be the name it, claim it, that it should be the you get up and you worship and you pray. And when we have those moments where it's like, God, I don't even have words for you. I don't want to talk to you right now. Like that feels like we're being faithless. But what you just described and what showing up in trust means is sure, if it is those other things, great. But what I hear in your story is that when given the opportunity to still live as though God is God, or to say, forget you because you let me down, you chose the former. Even if you had nothing to give in that other than like not giving up on God, that was the choice. It made me think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they were trying to faithfully serve God. And then things kept getting worse to the point where they're brought before Nebuchadnezzar and told bluntly, if you don't bow down, I'm throwing you in the furnace.
Mm-hmm.
And they know who God is, and they know they are resolved to serve him, but they're probably really confused. Why has he let it get this bad? And not just being thrown in the furnace, but Nebuchadnezzar is like losing his mind with fury, heated up to 6 times its heat, like so hot the guards are dying. And what trust looked like for them was to say, our God can save us, but even if he doesn't, we're not going to bow down. In other words, what they're probably thinking is, I really hope he does save us, but it's starting to look like this might go worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Put another way, as I hear you talking, and you kind of touched on this earlier, a lot of times our struggle with trust is what we're trying to trust in is what God will do rather than trust in who God is.
Right. Yes.
And that's hard because there's a lot we want God to do. And there's a lot about who he is that we either don't understand or in the moment don't like. That's hard, right? But I love what you've shared is that the answer there isn't to suddenly become this robust theologian or to exude this beautiful, worshipful faith. It is, I hope God does this, but even if he doesn't, I'm not bound down to anything else. That's hard enough on its own. But, I thought about this earlier. The other hard part about navigating trust is you are navigating your own understanding of trust while also dealing with external understandings of trust. And you're probably getting voices in these hard seasons from both ends of the spectrum. You've got people who are saying to you, like Job's friends said to him, you used to lead people, right? You used to represent God well. So why are you so bitter and angry? Like you need to shape up because you should be talking better about God right now, Job. You know better than this, right?
Right.
And then the other end of the spectrum is like Job's wife saying, it's clear, just curse him and die,
Yeah.
right? And so here you are wanting to trust God, being thrust in this situation where you're like, God, you're asking the impossible of me. And then I imagine there are these voices across the spectrum. So how do you navigate other people's understanding of what it means to trust God as you're trying to learn yourself how to trust God?
You might not like what I'm going to say on one of them.
I think I am going to like it.
I don't tolerate anymore. I used to as a younger Christian. I wanted to be a good girl and show myself, studied to be approved, and I did all the things I could do to be a part of the tribe in an acceptable way. And I love my friends.
Yeah.
But I don't tolerate anymore. The question that says, well, what is it, Noelle, you think God's trying to work out in you because he let you go through this? I don't let it in anymore. And I'll tell them to their face, that's not helpful and it's not biblically accurate. There are lots of people in Scripture who went through all kinds of stuff who don't have the why. We don't often get the why. Sometimes we just have the is. And so all I know is I have to go through this. And all I know is I don't want my kid to die. And all I know is God has shown me year after year after year that he's here. I have undeniable moments that don't make sense, that he's here. And I can't walk away from what I know simply because you're being kind of insensitive and unwise. I don't tolerate people telling me what God is or is not doing in my heart. I don't tolerate people telling me that they're perceiving that my motivations are wrong, which is a scripturally terrible thing for you to do. We're told not to judge people's motivations. That's a God thing. We can judge their fruit, but not their motivations. And I would hope that the fruit of my life shows something positive about the fact that I believe in God and I believe that Jesus came and that he did all he said he did so that I might live all that I have lived. Okay? So you can't come to me and tell me, I think God's allowing your son to suffer so that you can learn some awful thing that you didn't get before in life. That maybe your mom being a lunatic and pretending that she had an abdominal tumor when in fact she was pregnant with a man's baby that she doesn't even know his name and lied to the community and then gave birth. I mean, that's a crazy story, right? Who does that? Crazy people do that. All I'm saying is that I will not let anyone divert me from what I do know, which is that I'm not perfect. I've done bad things. Sometimes I say bad words and I shouldn't, and I know that. So it makes me imperfect. And my imperfection makes it so that I need a savior. And I get that. I want that. But I don't want you telling me that I have to now go through cancer or I have to watch my son lay in an ICU unit in the neurosurgical side of the hospital because of something that God needs to weed out in me. I think that you're taking a position of moral and spiritual superiority about my life when you do that. The humble thing to do is to sit and say, this is hurting. I'll hurt with you. If they're crying, let it happen. Cry with them because there's a good reason most of the time if they're crying. But I find that very difficult for people. A lot of people are uncomfortable. They don't know how to sit in the pain with you. And maybe that's something that God has really worked out through all of this because I find myself drawn to those moments. Now, I this is so stupid. I am going to go on a trip in less than 2 weeks, and I'm very excited about it. It's part of my I Beat Cancer comeback tour. That's what I tell people. So I'm going to go to Italy, and I want to go to Rome, and I want to go to the Pantheon because I know that Paul would have seen the Pantheon. He would have. It was the center of Rome at the time. I want to go walk the Palatine Gardens. I don't even know if is it Palatini? I have no idea, but I think it's called Palatine.
Follow your heart.
Yeah. I'm not Italian. I don't know. I get to do the Rare Ones dance in Rome, and I'm stoked about it. And I might, right in the middle of the piazza, do that. Who knows if a good song comes on. But so all that to say that I have this thing to just touch history a little bit and to see the things Paul saw at that time when it was tough. They light you on fire over Nero's dinner. Okay, so it was tough. Those people had it bad. I'm still here, so I was going to go get luggage for Rome, and I go to this expensive luggage shop. It's stupid. This is such a stupid thing. I just want to say it. I have always wanted. I feel so bad. A matching pair of luggage. I don't know why. My whole life, I've done, the hillbilly thing. You just, whatever bag you got and you stick it in the plane, you put a ribbon on it.
Right.
But I just thought, it just seems so awesome to be at an airport with matching luggage. And it's dumb, Paul. I know it's dumb, and I know it's carnal, and I get it. But you know what? I want it. I've saved up for it. So I thought I'm gonna get a piece of luggage. I take it in there. Oh, geez, to go get my initials. Because they do that. They'll stamp your initial. I'm like, oh yes, this is so good. I go in there and there's this little gal, and she looks up at me. You could see that one eye's off. Living with an eye that's off, that's got to be hard.
Yeah.
Right? It has to be hard because it's something people see right away. And people notice that lack of symmetry in a human face. It's just a thing. And so I look at her and immediately I'm hit with like, oh, bless you. We start talking. She's very professional. I liked her very much. So she says, well, why are you going to go to Italy? She goes, I've never been. And I said, well, I beat cancer comeback tour. I'm going to go and I want to see these places. And I mentioned about Paul and Nero and all of that. And she says, oh, what a dream. My mom died of cancer. Now, my choice is real clear. I'm here to get my luggage stamped. Let's do that. Or take the U-turn and say, I'm so sorry. How did that go? Talk to me about it. This is a woman who lost her mother 18 months ago. And she needed, in that moment, to tell me everything. It was pancreatic cancer and how fast her mom went and how difficult it's been to say goodbye. And I stood there and I had a choice. And you know what I'm going to do. Because people did it for me. I love because I have been loved. I have compassion because I have been given compassion. I have patience because I've been given patience. And so I made a 5-minute trip, an hour long. And at the end, I reached out and I hugged her. And she said, I needed this so badly today. And inside of myself, I thought, thank you, God. Thank you that this stupid thing of needing matching luggage with my stupid name on it, you turned into gold.
Yeah.
The real stuff for some unseen person in a luggage shop. That to me is the proper outcome of trusting God. You take forward into the experiences that God sets before you, a renewed vigor and vision for your place in the larger world. Because I've been forgiven much. And because of that, I feel very motivated now, more so than even before my cancer, to give it away.
It's interesting because it's not like you were there because you had started this comfort ministry. You were getting luggage, right? You were getting it monogrammed. And yet there was something within you that was locked in to be an ambassador of Christ and thus was attentive to that quiet invitation and aware of the choice. This was supposed to be 5 minutes, but I want to represent God. It made me think of, I pulled it up, 2 Corinthians 1:3-5. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. For just as we share abundantly in the sufferings of Christ,
Right.
so also our comfort abounds through Christ. Here's what's wild is there's elements of that all Christians could get behind. Oh yeah, it's good to comfort other people. But if we're really reading that and thinking of the full context and taking it as far as what you shared about what Paul ends up experiencing not too long after writing that, and he notes sharing in the sufferings of Christ. Well, we want a life with God to be one without suffering. So what happens is you're talking about how people come to us in this unhelpful way that we as Christians sometimes approach others. And what it reveals is sometimes our theology is based less on God and more on ourselves. Our theology is based on a desire for control or comfort or security. And so much of Scripture is the opposite of that, at least on a human level. Sharing in the sufferings of Christ is not comfortable. Jesus says, in this world you will have trouble. But Jesus knew that there was an eternal reality. And he is trying so patiently to get us to understand that the here and now is not the point. There is something eternal, but we as humans get so locked into it. So we see somebody crying, and our first gut response is, how can I get them to not be sad anymore?
Right.
Or if they keep on being sad, how can I keep myself from getting drawn into this?
Yeah.
But if our theology could be shaped more by love God, love others, rather than love and self-preservation of self, we'd see ourselves operating a lot differently. And so here you are now.
Okay.
You've had this lifetime of experiences. You've had these early hardships, and then you had these later hardships. And here you are, waking each day, working to make theological sense of it all, working to make personal sense of it all, working also just to be like, I just woke up and I don't even have the brain with to even figure out if I have coffee yet or not. And you're navigating this as a human. And yet God has positioned you to not just live in isolation, but you're living in community, as you've touched on several times. You're going on podcasts and sharing with people wherever. And you are a professor encountering students who are coming to you saying, I don't know how I'm going to pay the tuition for this year. And it's hard to trust God. And so as you think of where God has led you throughout your lifetime and where he has positioned you today, how do you understand this vocation of ambassador of Christ that you're living alongside all the other ways that you're living?
Wow. It's kind of funny. I don't wake up and think of myself as an ambassador of Christ. Kind of makes me want to sit a little taller. I just feel fortunate. I feel fortunate. I know, as I said at the beginning, who I am. I'm very aware. I'm more aware of my shortcomings than I like to think about. I also know what God has done. And he's done an impossible thing with my life. I am a professor. I shouldn't be. And I know it. And I'm in the music department with all the weirdos. And I love them because we all speak the same weirdo language. And, I love working with my students because I see myself in them. I see my children in them. And I also know that I've been given the nickname on our campus from time to time as worship mom because I have a role to play. I have a role where they are away from home and they are looking for something steady. And they don't want to be told a colloquialism. They want to be told the truth. They don't want some platitude, oh, it'll be okay. Trust God with all your heart and lean not into your own understanding. Of course, that's true. That's not what they're needing. They don't need to be preached to right now. What they need is for worship mom to say, I see your pain and here it is. And let's take a look at it. And I'll sit here and talk to you as long as you need me to. And here's my phone number if you need to talk later. I feel that my life has purpose. I could have been living much less than I am now, but I don't. And that has nothing to do other than God gave me opportunities and I availed myself to them. And now even the cancer, honestly, if you look at it, I would say is an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I'm still here. I haven't gone yet. And one day I will. One day we all stand before him. I'm learning to get a little braver at looking at that fact than I used to.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, I want people to know that I loved them well. And I am trusting that God will make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
He'll do his part and I'll do mine.
Yeah. One thing that's come to my mind as you're sharing that I want to encourage you with is I love the fact that one of the things you're most excited about with this trip is standing where the Apostle Paul stood. This guy who was also navigating what it meant to be an ambassador of Christ, who also knew the role that he had and said, I should not be in this role because I'm here telling people about Jesus, but previously I was killing people who talked about Jesus. Like I am no right.
Stone Stephen.
Right.
Watch it go down.
And then, you're sitting here sharing about how there's still days that you're like, I'm not doing what I feel like I should be doing. And that's what the Apostle Paul said is I don't understand what I do because what I want to do, I don't do. And what I hate to do, I do. And
Yeah.
I love that you are aiming to stand where he stood and he stood in similar places where you stand. Different story
Yep.
in a lot of ways, but some of these core truths, and more importantly, the core truth that he realized that he was still learning and discerning what it meant to actually seek God,
Yes.
love others. Not that I have achieved perfection, but I continue to run the race. And so
Yes.
I just want to encourage you because I love where this whole conversation has gone, but there is so much that you shared with a vulnerability and transparency, but also an honesty. Because as you noted, there's a lot of stuff that we've talked about that the church really doesn't want to talk about sometimes.
No.
And doesn't know how to talk about it because it usually doesn't have a nice bow to tie onto it.
No Nice Bow. That's a
Mhm.
great book title.
Yeah. We'll see which one of us gets to it first. I love how God is using not just your story, but your stories, including the one that's still being written,
Yeah.
and your willingness to be an ongoing participant as it's being written. The way you talk is as though you know you're not even the main character. Like, God is the main character in all of this. And part of our journey in learning to trust him is the more we learn who he actually is as the main character, the more we understand who we are in that story. And
That's
so
right.
there's so much more that we could talk about. If somebody's listening and they want to connect with you or learn more of your story, how can they do so?
If they want to connect with me, I'm on Instagram under my name, Noelle Cablay. I could always DM me if you want. And as far as books, I have 2 books. The first one's called Pieces of Sky, and it's the memoir of my childhood that is nuts. And I won 2 national awards for that
Oh,
one.
wow.
And then the new book is called Washed in Blue. It just won its first award in January. I'm up for a couple others. We'll see
Wow.
what the Lord does. Can
Congratulations.
I share one? Do we have time for me to
Oh,
share just one?
you share what you want to share.
Washed in Blue's named because of the last chapter. I tell the story from the appearance of cancer, through the diagnosis, through the treatment, through the chemotherapy, radiation, and I don't hold back. I tell the
Hmm.
truth of what it is.
Yeah.
Women who are going to go through this, they need to know. And I've had them tell me this was a tough read, but you were right.
Hmm.
And I also wanted to bring honor to the medical people who, saved my life. And I really wanted to love on my community and share that, I live in Southern California and there are a lot of stereotypes about the people here.
Mhm.
And we really busted those up in this story. And I,
Mm.
I love that.
Yeah.
But the book isn't named for that. The book is named for what happened in the last chapter. The last chapter takes place in Saint-Chapelle in France. I was told I was NED on March 23rd of 2024. And the doctor looks at me and goes, what are you going to do now? And I said, I'm going to Europe. And my husband goes, what? I go, yeah, we're leaving in 3 weeks. I said, if I'm NED, I'm going to book the trip. And
Mm.
that was the thing. So off we go 3 weeks later. The second day we were there, we ended up going to Saint-Chapelle. In Paris, France, you have Notre Dame. And right across the street is this chapel that was built for the king.
Mm.
Notre Dame wasn't open because it had had a fire.
Yeah.
So I booked tickets to go because I've always wanted to see the stained glass in the chapel itself is made with lapis lazuli that they ground up
Mm.
and they put it in the silica. And this is in the 1200s. In the 1200s, they had kilns with bellows, It's got a specific color to it. And as an artist, I'm drawn to color and sound.
Mhm.
I wanted to experience. I felt drawn to go. So we get there to Saint-Chapelle, and we finally make it into the chapel, and it's glowing.
Mm.
The sun's coming through, and you can see the particulates in the air are shining like silver in the blue glow.
Mm.
And we walk around, and we had headphones, and I started to feel tired because I was only, a month out of my radiation.
Mhm.
So I thought, I'll just sit in one of these chairs. So I sit in the chair, and as I'm sitting there, I felt this wave of grief hit me. I wasn't expecting it. But as I sat there, I just thought, God, I don't ask you this very often. And I may not know, but I'd sure like to figure out why. I've been through so much, and this was tough. Why me? Why my son? Why now?
Mhm.
And I know I don't deserve more than anything that anyone else does. I don't deserve anything. But yet I am your kid. So why?
Mhm.
I didn't have any words. I just felt myself start to cry. And I slowly reached up and wiped a tear away. And it just would not stop. It wasn't overt. I wasn't bellowing. There was nothing. I was just sitting there in silence. And all the tourists are around me. It just was a scene. This one woman with very little hair sitting in this space. And I'm looking at the panels. And all of the panels were stories from the Bible. It starts with Genesis and it goes to Acts.
Mhm.
And it even has a thing with the king getting the crown of thorns. I always have to have the king in there. And as I'm sitting there, I realized something. I'm the girl from Oklahoma. I walked on the train tracks in the middle of August, hungry and tired and no hope for my future. And you took pity on her, God.
Mhm.
And somehow this girl from Oklahoma got back to California. And she ended up going through a series of events that led her to SDSU. And I got a degree. And I got to make something of my life when I had nothing 10 years earlier. And so the art of becoming me really has to do with the art of who you are. And I'm looking at art in this space. And I'm looking at these stories. And I'm being very metaphysical in this moment. And I'm still crying, Paul.
Mhm.
Just quietly wiping tears off my face. And then all of a sudden, I felt the voice that is not my own speak to me. And it said this: you're sitting in the space of kings,
Mhm.
and I put you here. And I look around, and I'm looking at the panels, and you read the story from the bottom up. Did you know that? That when they make them, you start here, and you go up. And as I'm looking at the story that looked like David, pretty sure it was the one on David, all of a sudden, I'm looking up. And I went, oh my gosh. The artisans from 1240 made it such that the person with the most power in the world that they would have known of at that time would have had to read the stories and find himself looking up
Mhm.
each time. And as I sat there thinking about that, that blue light just washed over me.
Mhm.
And I wasn't grieving anymore.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, it wasn't easy, but you're still here, aren't you? You were here then, and you're here now. You live outside of time, and you live outside of pain, and you live outside of experience because you are who you say you are. And you're still here. And it's good enough.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. Again, there's so much that we've touched on, so much more we could touch on. But as we close, is there anything else that God's putting on your heart that you feel led to share?
No, that was it. I just wanted to tell that blue story. And I want to thank you for having me, Paul.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, you're my brother, and
Mhm.
I just feel so blessed that you said yes to my little request. And I wish you nothing but wonderful things in a
Thank
great
you.
ministry that is highly diversified and organic. I love that.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you so much.
You will walk, you will run, and dance through the streets, shouting praise to the one. You're healed, you're clean. Go out, tell the people what you've seen. Revived in Him, new life in Him.
In Psalm 62, David says this: "Truly, my soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken. How long will you assault me? Would all of you throw me down this leaning wall, this tottering fence? Surely they intend to topple me from my lofty place. They take delight in lies. With their mouths they bless, but in their hearts they curse. Yes, my soul, find rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. David is known as a man after God's own heart, and we see him trusting God in profound ways. When the entire Israelite army was afraid to face one man, David, the smallest amongst them, stepped up because he trusted God. When he was pursued by Saul and had to hide in caves, he trusted in God. And regardless of the hardships that he faced throughout his life, he was resolved to trust, and yet the hardships kept coming. Psalm after psalm after psalm show us moments in David's life where the opposition and pain are so extreme that it is hard for him to understand where God is and why he's allowing it to happen. And yet, in these psalms, he is still resolved. Yes, my soul, find rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly, he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will not be shaken. He reiterates these lines from verses 1 and 2. He is emphatic to his soul and reminds himself that his salvation and his honor depend on God, that God is his mighty rock, his refuge. And then he extends this truth out to any who will listen. Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. There are things that happen in our life that can make it seem like God is not our refuge. And yet David's life revealed the opposite. That in hardship after hardship after hardship, God had shown himself faithful. God was his refuge, even when David felt most alone. And through this, David was able to learn that his trust could not be simply in what he wanted God to do, but his trust should be in who God is. David named God's characteristics even as his adversaries advanced, because he knew no matter what happened, it did not change the true nature of the God who created him. David trusted in who God is, and we can do the same. If you are navigating an intense hardship, if it seems like God is not your refuge, follow David's lead. Claim God's characteristics and resolve to trust that those characteristics are true. Name it in the hardest moments, and then ask yourself, where did you see God?